And Chad, I want to ask one further question along these lines, because, with the issue that you were going through, you and your wife had very severe difficulties, challenges you had to overcome. And I know it took you some time. It took you a lot of patience, a lot of hard work, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of rebuilding trust and everything else. And I know at this point you would say it was worth it all. At that point, you probably would have said, you know what, I'm not really sure completely whether it's worth it all. The other thing is that, maybe my kids, like you were saying, will be better off without me. There's a lot of people that think that, kids are resilient. When families break down, kids are resilient. When parents are happy because they're divorced, the kids will be happy. But when you talk to your kids about just doing that, their response wasn't exactly what you anticipated, was it?
No, I mean, you hear that same story all the time. Every time somebody's struggling with divorce, you talk to them, you hear the same justified excuse as well. They're not going to hear the fighting anymore. It's not going to be the chaos anymore. They're going to get 2 Christmases, like all the way. But the truth is, children, and I could say from my own experience of being a divorced family, children are deeply wounded by the separation of a mother and father. And if there's any way to keep the marriage together, then you must, because there's no healthier environment for children. Even in a home where there's bickering and fighting, there's no better environment than being an environment where there's I'm not talking about violent
right.
things. I mean, safety's obviously important. I'm talking about like fighting and stuff like that, and people not getting along or not being happy. I don't know why everybody feels they're entitled to be happy, but there's no better environment for a child than being at home with their mother and father. And a lot of the problems we see in this country, and it's one of the things that, the issue going on right now, everybody's scared to say it. Like, everybody's scared because of the Black Lives Matters movement. They're terrified to say that we have a problem in our inner cities in fatherless homes. And that's, if we want to really address what's going on in inner cities and in these Black communities, it starts in the home. It doesn't start with the president. It doesn't start with the governor and mayor or the leaders in these cities who are always going to fail us. It starts in the home, with the parents in the home. And that's how we can really fix these communities.
You're exactly right.
Yeah. I love Black people. I don't like the Black Lives Matter organization. What I love most is families that are intact and see healthy children, adults, and then parent healthy children as well.
So even
talk about.
We know that government policy is not the answer to fixing things, but could you maybe comment on how sometimes the government policy actually makes things worse? So, for example, like when you talk about the issue of, the children want to be raised in an intact family. In Texas, we have the issue of unilateral, no-fault divorce for any reason, for no reason. Somebody's not happy. Somebody met somebody new. Somebody wants to find themselves. And the state, without exception, 100% of the time, will side with the person who wants out of the marriage. Without exception. And they think, well, it's just between adults. But you're talking about a generational curse, in a sense, that the decisions of the parents is affecting the children. And I would go so far as to say the grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And the state is allowing policies to be in place that are destructive. We're not going to ask the state to help us and to solve these the core issues, but please quit destroying our families. Can you talk anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, the contractual, and I don't think marriage is a contract, by the way. It's a covenant between a man and a woman.
And go explain a little bit more of that as you're done here, because I want to hear that too.
But there is a contractual legal binding document, and Melissa is an attorney and probably knows more about this than me, but I don't think that someone should be able to just get out of that contract like we just on a whim. I like to see in states where where they have to have like a 6-month cool off period or some kind of period to where they actually have to think it through, and it should not be an easy process. And if someone wants out of the marriage, they should not be entitled to all the things that they should not have the entitled privileges of getting out of a marriage. For example, if I'm a husband and my wife after 20 years decides she just wants to leave me, then should she get half of my retirement because she's the one deciding to leave me without grounds for that divorce? Should she get the kids? I'm not the one that wants to divorce. Should she get the kids? Like those kind of things should be considered. It should not be made so easy because when things are easy, people do them more quickly.
Talk a little bit more about the covenant aspect of it, though, too, that you mentioned, because I think that's a very important part when we talk about, for example, a couple of states that do have covenant marriage versus right now the states think that if you get married, they get to control your marriage and all the rules and everything like that. But two people that come together and they say, listen, we are coming together in a faith-based relationship. We are getting married because, we believe that this is God's purpose for our lives. I have some issues with the fact that the state can go into an institution like that is a sacrament of the church in some instances, or it's an ordinance of the church, and the state just kind of tramples over the religion. They intrude upon the religious domain in a sense. And but I think when you're talking about covenant marriage, that's kind of what you're referring to a little bit. If I'm following your drift, is that correct?
Yeah. Well, covenant marriage to me is it says, well, we go beyond a legal contract, and this covenant marriage is a binding agreement between a man and woman and God. Now, the real problem comes where the more godless our nation becomes, and the less people value God in our country, the more problems we see everywhere across the spectrum. A lot of people talk, listening, that wouldn't agree with you or I on faith or relationship with God would say that this conversation is imposing God on their marriage, and they talk about separation of church and state. Well, separation of church and state was never intended to protect the state from church or protect the people from church. It was meant to protect the church from the government and protect the people from the government and protect the people from the government getting involved in these matters. And so these aren't matters for the government. I don't think the government should be involved in these types of things and have a say in our marriages. So I know that's probably not a popular thing. You're asking why we are where we are in our country on marriage or so many areas. This is